What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Gong Pod for another week. So we're updating you with everything. What's going on in the Gong? Everything Illawarra, pretty much. Everything Wollongong. This is for the locals, this one. So reminder, make sure you listen to our eps as well. Share the eps around with your friends, your local friends, your international friends. Doesn't matter. Share it around. Share the love. I just want to give us a little shout out as well. So make sure you follow us on Insta and TikTok, YouTube, Spotify. Hit the subscribe button. And so this is a weekly pod where we chat all things Gong. We want to get people involved as well. So if you know anyone we should talk to, again, flick us a message, let us know, and we'll get straight to it. But anyway, let's go on. So what's doing locally? So quick little review of the little news from the last week. So Dragons, St. George Illawarra Dragons, that is, they got an election pledge for funding for their new Centre of Excellence, which I thought was already funded anyway when it was announced. But anyway, I think they got like $16.5 million or something like that, but it's only an election pledge. A certain government has to get in. We're not about politics on this pod, just FYI. So if you came here for political analysis, then I'm sorry, but I'm not going to give you any political analysis. I actually don't really like politics. Anyway, Carl's Jr., hard-hitting news. I know, Carl's Jr. in Warrawong finally closed. Even though they went into administration like mid-last year, Warrawong and Nowra said they were going to stay open, but no, they finally closed. Now, the luckiest lady in the region reached out because a lady from Shell Harbour, the Shell Harbour area, won 100K in the lotto last week. Now, cool, 100K. Why is it news? It's because she won exactly the same jackpot the year before. Now, I don't understand how one can have that much luck. So it's 200 grand in lotto earnings in pretty much 2 calendar years. So whatever voodoo or juju that lady's doing, sprinkle us with it a bit, please. Now, the headline in the Merc that really stood out to me this week, and this is sort of a question I want to relay on everyone once I read this out. So, Fairy Meadow man wounded neighbour's head because he wouldn't turn the TV down. So this man's neighbour's TV was so loud and it pissed off this guy so much that he decided to come over his house and whack him in the head. Have you ever gotten to the point with someone in your family where they've had the TV or something so loud that you've gone in and whacked them in the head? Let me know. That's the pressing question for this week. Last but not least, we mentioned them last week as well, but yours and ours are on this weekend as well. It's a bit different. It's at Flagstaff Hill this year. Okay, new segment this week. It's Gong Shout-Outs. So we're all local at this pod, right? Jane's in the background nodding her head and agreeing to me. We're shouting out the best in our local region this week, and I've got 2. First one, shout out to Illawarra Then and Now on TikTok. So if you don't know what they are, they post quite regularly. They put up like maps post from like random spots in the region from like recently, and then they go back to like 2009 and just show us what it's like back in 2009. And it's just cool and crazy to see how much some parts of our local scene have changed in just a short amount of time. So shout out to Illawarra Then and Now. Now, I want to get Jane in the background in on this next one because this changed my life on Saturday morning at North Gong. So I went for a walk in North Gong on Saturday. Thought I'd get a coffee. Place I hadn't been to before. Bread, espresso, and in North Wollongong. This coffee changed my life, and it changed my partner's life as well. This coffee was the first time we'd been there, and this coffee might have been the best I've ever had. Now, Jane behind the camera here, who are you shouting out? Because you're shouting out someone that you usually go to all the time as well.
That's it, mate. I'm going to one-up you. We're going Crazy Horse Ferry Meadow for the ultimate.
Crazy Horse Ferry Meadow. Tell me about Crazy Horse Ferry Meadow.
Damo, the owner.
Damo, the owner. You can, I think I said this to you yesterday. No, there's nobody you could trust more than a bloke who owns a cafe named Damo.
Yeah.
Correct.
Sidekick Chris. The banter, the hilarity, the absolute top.
Where are they located?
Ferry Meadow, Main Street, whatever that's called.
There you go. Ferry Meadow Main Street. Princess Highway?
That would be the one.
That would be the one. The Princess Highway. That would be a shout out to it. Crazy Horse Coffee. Apparently, I've got a few coffee places to try out, I think. Anyone else who's watching and has a coffee recommendation, please shoot it through. We might even make some TikTok content on it as well. So coffee places, shout it out. We'll go check them out, and we may even just post it to our channels as well. But there you go, Bread Espresso, and you changed my life on Sunday morning. Thank you. To the point where I'm still talking about your coffee right now, and I've only had it once. I'll definitely be coming back anyway. And the pastries look super good there as well. Like, you know, you go to some places and croissants aren't even that big. Well, these ones were like big and they looked good, wrapped to perfection. And they're fresh.
There's nothing worse than when you go to get your little coffee and you're like,
yeah,
I'm going to splurge on that little side pastry.
Yes.
You get the freaking day-old croissant.
Yes. So Jane's just said in the background as well, there's nothing worse than when you go for a coffee and you think, yeah, I'll treat myself to a little pastry, and it's like a day old and stale. If they're fresh, like Jane said, perfect. But there's nothing. Which they are at Bread Espresso, and shout out to them. Reach out. Let's collaborate. Anyway, there's one more shout out we've got as well, and this is from the listeners, this one. So listener Jackson wants to shout out, get this, Only Trees, which is the unofficial social media page of the Fig Tree Soccer Club all-age team. So they made their own little like player. You can look it up on Insta and all that. They made their own little like accounts where they just create content driven by the players as well. And my question is, why aren't there more pages like this, particularly in the top grades like the Illawarra Premier League and the New South Wales Premier League? I can't believe the Wolves don't have like behind the scenes content like this. Wolves, what are you doing? If you want some, I know a guy. It's me, by the way. Anyway, top gong this week. So last week we were asking you what your favourite ice creameries were in the gong. We got a few suggestions. One of them, which I had absolutely no idea about, probably because it's so far away from us, Gelato Man Shop in Helensburgh. So shout out to our guys in the Berg. Apparently it's worth a trip, worth a drive up to Helensburgh for. So Gelato Man Shop in Helensburgh. And I think I'm going to have to make the trip to Miller's Bakehouse up in the northern suburbs, Bulli or Thirroul, I can't remember. But around the gong, I'm going to quote them. So I said the Cow and the Moon's my number one. I hadn't been to Miller's yet. They say Cow and the Moon is great. Miller's Bakehouse is next level. Miller's, reach out. Are you next level? I'm getting fist bumps from Jane behind me in the camera as well. She agrees. Next level, top tier. Miller's, reach out. I'll do some content for you. All I want is an ice cream. Thank you. Anyway, other suggestions we got were Scoops in Shell Harbour Village. Shout out to my man, Chris Rostevsky. Reach out. If you want to come on the pod, be my guest. And Cold Rock. Yeah, old faithful Cold Rock in the gong, right? But yeah, I think I need to make the trip up to Miller's Bakehouse. And Miller's, work out of time. Let's do it. But top gong for this week. So this week, we did ice creams last week. This week, I want your top 5 schnitzels and parmesanas in the Illawarra. What I've got 2 suggestions. My top one that I've had is the Coniston Hotel. The second one that I've had is Collie's. I had their Parmigiana, and you see my hand next to my head, it was like twice the size of my hand. Shout out to the Collie's Parmigiana. Jane, you got any schnitty recommendations? I know you're a bit of a plant eater, aren't you? Are there any vegan schnitzel recommendations you've got?
I didn't get a chance to look that up, but there definitely would be.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah?
okay. No, you're just doing schnitzels. I'm
No.
too excited.
Jane's got nothing.
Calm down.
Oh, wait. You got too excited over something there. Yeah, anyway. No vegan schnitzel recommendations, but for our plant eaters out there, you can recommend vegan schnitzels as well. Okay, over to the local highlight of the weekend. We're obviously going to get into it a bit more later, but I am giving it to the Hawks this week just purely because of the community effect it's having. So obviously they first game of the semi-finals is on Friday night at home, which is already sold out, which I'll talk about tickets later, but it was virtually impossible unless you were a member to get a ticket. But also, they've forced other sporting teams locally to change their games. The Wolves have actually changed their game because the Hawks are playing Friday night. So the Wolves are meant to be playing Friday. They've moved that to Saturday. But again, we'll get into that a bit later as well. So that's my local highlight of the week. However, my hot take of the week for this week is based off rugby league. And I've been saying this ever since they signed Clint Gutherson, they signed Damien Cook, and they signed Valentine Holmes. I think the Dragons, the St. George Illawarra Dragons, are going to make the NRL top 8 this year. Not because of their trial performance. Obviously, their trial performance was very good the first 2 weeks. But just everything in general. Gutho, if more than anything else, Gutho can bring culture changes. And like, he may not be the quickest fullback in the NRL, but I tell you what, the culture change and the fitness he'll bring. And what was the number one concern in the back line last year? Defense. He shores that up immediately. No defensive lapses with Gutho. If anything, my opinion, Gutho's the reason why Parramatta didn't get the spoon last year. So that's my hot take of the week. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Okay, so let's get into sport now. And a little shout out as well. I was down in North Gong on Saturday morning. Beach Fives Rugby League was going on in North Gong. It was all the kids playing on the sand. They had this actual like inflatable field as well. So shout out to the Beach Fives. They're actually playing tackle on there as well. I really wanted to get involved, but I don't think the girlfriend would have been impressed if I interrupted our beach walk like that. But shout out to the Beach Fives Rugby League at North Gong that was taking place last Saturday. Okay, let's get into rugby league. And as I mentioned, Dragons, huge Charity Shield win over the Rabbitohs. It was only their second Charity Shield win in like 12 years or something like that, which is ridiculous. And it's the most points they've actually ever scored in the Charity Shield. 42 Charity Shield games they've played. They've never scored more than 40 or 46 points. That's their new record. But apparently, according to the Mercury as well, the 72 points between both sides was actually a combined record, which, lots of points. And it was like 34-0 after 30 minutes is absolutely insane. But again, like talking about my hot take, I reckon the Dragons are going to make the 8. Their 4 signings. Ilias was, in my opinion, unfairly maligned, particularly last year. Just he didn't thrive under Demetrio. But before that, you got to remember he was highly touted. So, and Flano just tends to get the best out of his halves. I mean, you look at these halves. His halves pairing when he won the comp, I think Chad Townsend was 7. I don't know who was 6. I think it might have been Matt Moylan potentially. But no, it's James Maloney. Sorry, apologies. But he tends to get the best out of his halves every time. But Sione Finau, holy shit, 4 tries. And not only 4 tries, one of them he scored at concussed pretty much. Yeah, you can score with his eyes closed, Sione Finau. So we're just going to run through a little bit of the information, the team information from the game. I tell you what, grim if you're a Souths fan, because 90% completion rate. So South still completed more than the Dragons, although mind you, they had like 9 less sets to complete from as well. But if you complete at 90% and you're still losing by that, it's a bit concerning. But again, Dragons topping all the meters gained charts, tackle breaks, almost double Souths, and play the ball a lot quicker as well. A lot more offloads. But yeah, defense was good and all that. Go to some player stats now. Let's have a look. So Pete Mamazella, the two hookers topped the tackles for both teams. So Pete Mamazella had 43 for the Bunnies. Damien Cook had 36. In terms of run meters, Jai Gray had 168 for Souths. Valentine Holmes, the top for the Dragons, 164. Sione Finau, 2 line breaks. Sione Finau, most fantasy points, whatever you want to read into that. But yeah, Sione Finau, 16 points, 4 tries. Val Holmes got 10 points. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of jealous, Dragons fan. There's for the first time in what seems like a while, there is optimism and hope for your club. So honestly, you're playing the Dogs, and I think the Dogs lost to the Broncos on the weekend. That'll be a good contest at Kogarah round 1. So really looking forward to watching that. But another thing as well that some people may not have seen, and it was being reported by 9 over in Vegas. So obviously the NRL round 1 Vegas games happening this weekend as we speak. And their reporter, Michael Chamis, was talking about looking forward into next year. And he's saying the word is the Dragons and the Bulldogs might be heading over to Vegas for round 1 in 2026. So what do you reckon, Dragons fans? Are you going to make the trip over to Vegas if they go round 1 next year? Let me know. See how you go. But yeah, so apparently Dragons and Bulldogs next year. As for the other two teams, don't know yet. But Chamis is saying Dragons and Bulldogs are heading over to Vegas for 2026 round 1. So let's see how that one goes. Speaking of Dragons of a different kind, in more local side, the Illawarra South Coast Dragons. So they started their men's country championship and they started it pretty well. 48-6 win over Macarthur West Tigers at Kirkham Park. God, if you have West Tigers in your name, you just can't catch a break, can't you? So Braxton Wallace and Dane Chisholm bagging doubles. Chisholm lands 7 from 8 conversion attempts and scored 24 points. That's a lot of points. In the Andrew Johns Cup, the Dragons recorded their 3rd win in a row to beat the Tigers 2012. And they were leading by about 14-12 with 20 minutes remaining. So it was a tight one. And then Preston Sager sealed the win for the Dragons with a 4-point try in the dying minutes. And in the Laurie Daly Cup, the under-18s, 26-22 win over the Tigers. They were down 22-10 at the 49th minute. And then they kicked in the gear. 3 unanswered tries. And they got the 4-point win. So well done to them. So that's Rugby League for this week. If we missed anything, I'm sure Illawarra Rugby League in Group 7 will be starting soon as well. So if you want us to talk about that, flick it through, or any other Rugby League questions you have. Right, Hawks. I've got a bone to pick. No, I actually don't, but I'm just really depressed because I couldn't get any tickets to the Hawks game on Friday night because it sold out. General admission sold out in like 15 minutes. So I understand the members pay all year, yada, 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 but I wanted to go to the game. Anyway, the tickets were so hot in demand and you can't blame them at the moment. The Hawks are they're definitely the hottest ticket in town at the moment, obviously topping the comp after the regular season, and they're going into the playoffs. 2 wins from their final series here against South East Melbourne. And they're in the NBL finals for the first time in, I don't know, a few years, put it that way. But they haven't won the chip since 2001. So should they win it, ends a 24-year wait for the Hawks. And they'll take on the winner if they get through. Don't want to jinx this here, but if they win, they will take on the winner of Melbourne United and Perth Wildcats. Melbourne United, they've beaten 2 times to 1 this year, and the Wildcats exactly the same. But we'll get into a little bit of a preview for this weekend. And there's 2 games this weekend. So game 1, 7:30 at home on Friday night. And game 2 is down in Melbourne Sunday, I believe, 2:30 p.m. away. Despite us having better records against Melbourne and Perth, we have worst record against South East Melbourne. So in the 3 games we've played them this year, we won once, but the last 2 we've lost, including New Year's Eve at home earlier on. But we have had a 3-week break, and Darius Days and Trey Kell will almost certainly be back for the contest. So good signs, and it was almost perfect timing, that break. But we talked about how long the break was last week. But yeah, so 3 weeks break, done and dusted finally. It did fly by in a way for some, but apparently Tatum's still been smashing them in the break, just keeping them on their toes. So that is a good sign. Okay, so however, since the last time we spoke to you guys, they had their awards night, and the Hawks. The evening began with Tyler Harvey winning Members' Choice Award for Player of the Year, voted by all the members, of course. And the development player, Luca Yates, he got the Illawarra Hawks Community Award. How good is that? Wani Swakala-Bullock, no surprise, Defensive Player of the Year. Then it got down to Dave O'Hickey, also got Most Improved Player. Mason Peatling stepped up big time this year. He got the Players Player Award. So that's for the players. Now, in terms of Volunteer of the Year, the Phil Driscoll OAM Volunteer of the Year. Shout out to Mick Hendricks, that is, who got it for his dedication and contributions to the club. So shout out, Mick. Well done. I know you follow us on Insta as well. Thanks for following. And last one, before we get into the MVP, the Club Person of the Year was Amber Morrissey, who does the events and special projects for the club as well. And I tell you what, it's a good event to go watch the Illawarra Hawks, and that all goes down to the behind-the-scenes stuff. So shout out to Amber, who got the Club Person of the Year. But NBL 25 MVP for the Hawks, and it wasn't presented to one, but 3 players. So Trey Kell, Sam Frolling, and Tyler Harvey. So the two captains, and Trey, obviously, who came in from, I forget, it was Adelaide? Oh, God. If I get that wrong, I'm so sorry, Trey. But yeah, so in my opinion, I was looked at it first and I was like, 3 for the MVP. But it's kind of like, who do you choose? Because Tyler and Trey both made the All-NBL first team. So it's just like, okay, well, who got more votes there? Is that the way? But I don't know how the club MVP works. Maybe it's a player system where it's like a 3-2-1 or something like that. But I liken it to being unable to separate your favourite children, right? I mean, I love you all, Mum says. Mum, of course, being the person who read out this award. But I was reading the preview for the South East Melbourne game today on a completely unrelated note as well. And they were talking to, I think they were talking to JT as well about what's the plan going forward into the next couple of games. But they were also talking to Toddy Blanchfield, who's a really good bounce back story as well. He came to the Hawks a couple of years ago. And in the article, he was saying like, everyone just thought it was like a retirement tour or something like that for Toddy. But if there's ever been a time where Toddy's shown his worth this season, it's when Darius was out the last month or so. He was unbelievable. I go back to the Cairns game away, which we lost, and if it wasn't for Toddy Blanchfield, we would not have had a sniff in that last quarter, in my opinion. But one thing that stood out to me, Toddy Blanchfield's nickname, according to this preview, was Hot Toddy. Read of that what you will, listeners. Anyway, we're going to go to football now. Local football we're going to start with, because there is local football this week. It begins with the Burt Bampton Cup, which is the old local cup for the Football South Coast teams, the District League, the Community League, and the Illawarra Premier League. Mainly, it's all pretty much District League and Community League teams this week. So what we've got, first game of the Bampton Cup gets underway on Thursday. Warilla take on Fernhill. And then on Saturday, we've got 5 games. Warilla take on Coaldale again. I might have to look at that. That might be 2 different Warilla sites. I don't know how I put that down there, but I'll double check that after. That could be a complete error on my part. Berkeley take on Gerringong. Corrimal host the Rule. UOW's all-age side take on Oak Flats Kraken, one of the all-time names, release the Kraken. And Victory's all-age take on UOW's District League team. So obviously the District League team and the all-age team. 2 different teams. And on Sunday, we've got Bellambi taking on Picton and Shoalhaven taking on Unanderra. So that's the Bampton Cup. The leagues get underway. I think it might even be next week. So we'll try and get someone on the phone for that. But one thing I want to talk about as well, the Australia Cup. I think they call it the Hahn Australia Cup now, something like that. Imagine it's popping a beer on the sideline. But 13 clubs locally are taking part. That's not including the rep teams. 13 clubs locally this year. So rattle off Bulli, Albion Park FC, not Albion Park White Eagles, have signed up. Cringilla, Wollongong United, Wollongong Olympic, Shell Harbour, Tarrawanna, Gerringong, Fig Tree, Coaldale, Oak Flats, Kraken, another top tier name again in there in representing us, Fernhill and Corrimal. Now, why I want to bring this up, I'm actually disappointed it's only 13 teams because there used to be so many local Illawarra teams. Like, it was almost, if you're in the Illawarra Premier League, it's a sense of pride you have to be in the Australia Cup as well. So I want to know why that's changed, because I look at it here. There's only 6 Illawarra Premier League clubs in the signed up to the Australia Cup. So I want to know why that's the case. Is there a financial reason? Is it just they can't be bothered travelling? What is it? Let me know. Anyway, Wollongong Wolves. So they had an interesting week. It was a very unique scenario. So they had their first draw against RPL Leichhardt a couple of weeks ago. Then, like we talked about last week, they were up 1-0 against St. George, but then the game had to be postponed because lightning struck in the 30th minute. So they stopped it at the 31st minute, 1-0 up. They finally resumed it last Wednesday night, and they ended up getting a pretty good 3-0 win. So Nicholas Olsen scored his second, so he got 2 for the game, which is that not the longest brace of all time, 5 days? Because he scored his first on Friday night and then the second one on Wednesday night. Tell me, is that the longest brace in footballing history? I hope someone's got an absurd fact that actually tops that, just for shits and gigs. But let me know, please. Anyway, completely off topic there. So he scored a brace, and Damon Gray came on, which was his substitute, I think it was, and he came on and scored late. So they got that win, and then very quickly moved on to Sydney Olympic, which ended up being a 0-0 draw. So I remember one thing Warren Grieve, their coach, was talking about in the round 1 was tying up things defensively because they conceded 3. And in the end, they got a 0-0 draw at Belmore Oval. So second clean sheet of the year. Apologies. I'm just thinking about there. So they got 2 clean sheets in a row, which is definitely a response. So it's, good. So point away from home, but the coach went on the record saying he's disappointed he didn't come away with all 3. So that's a decent start for the Wolves. They haven't lost a game yet, still undefeated. But shout out to the Wolves, though. They actually moved their game against Central Coast Mariners this weekend to Saturday, so everyone could watch the Hawks get around the Hawks. That's what being local is all about. So shout out to the Wolves, and they play Saturday, I believe, this weekend. Right, the South Coast Flames. So they had a 2-1 win over Prospect United. I believe it was away on the weekend. So Daniel Morola and Jyden Harbour on the score sheet. And their 20s had a 3-0 win as well. So we're going to move on to UFC. Why am I moving on to UFC? Because Volk's back, baby. Volk is coming back with a vengeance. He's got a title shot in April. So last week got announced Volk is returning to the big stage. He's going to be fighting at UFC 314 in Miami, and he's taking on Diego Lopez for the vacated featherweight belt. So that belt was originally held by Ilya Topuria, who knocked Volk out, I think it was last year. And he vacated his title because I believe he's going up a division. So if you go up a division like that, he's vacated it. But that means Volk will be fighting Lopez for the featherweight title, which he held for a long time, on April 12 at Kaseya Center. Excuse me, just double check if April 12, if it's a Saturday, that's the American time. It'll be on Sunday, our time. That's usually when UFC events on. But it's his first fight in 14 months. So he lost to Taporia at UFC 298 in February last year. So, but yeah, Mercury says it right here. He had a 1,500-day run as the champ. I believe he won the belt in Vegas in 2019, and I was actually in Vegas the night he won that belt. So that's how long he's held that title for. So Volk's back, and I'm sure everyone's going to get around it. The Illawarra Hotel will probably change it to the Volkanovski Hotel once again. Just as you do, get around the local boys, get around our local champions. And speaking of local champions, so we've had the Kiama Sevens tournament, and it's been won and run. 44 teams came around from the whole country as well. I didn't realize it was that big. The Kiama Sevens, 53rd edition. So 28 men's rugby teams and 16 women's side went to Kiama Showground. And in the end, Eastwood was crowned the Kiama 7 champions, while Western Sydney 2 Blues had to settle for taking on runners-up, beat Norths 19-10 in the decider. Eastwood won the main cup after being Warringah 24-10, and there was also some silverware locally for the Illawarra District Rugby Union outfit Shoalhaven, who won got some silverware as well. And host club Kiama lost the men's country final 21-19. Ouch. That is low. But Shoalhaven won the last, obviously they've won the last 3 local grand finals, and they were last beaten in the competition in July 30th, 2022. Is that the last time Shoalhaven has lost in the local rugby union? Holy shit. I did not realise that is how long. But they won the reserve grade bowl final, and they beat Burraneer 18-12. But that's sport for this week. That's the Gong Pod for this week. I really call out to the listeners, get involved. We're going to do a little thing down the line where if you want to chat about something, we can call the listeners, and you want to chat something local, you can come on the pod. So if you want to get on the pod, flick us a DM. But if you haven't already, please share the pod with friends as well. They may not know about us yet, but if they're from the region or they live here, share it with them. Get everybody involved, because the more people who get involved, the better. Okay, so, but thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe as well. Make sure you're following us on Insta, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify. Make sure you got notifications on for YouTube and Spotify so you get notified when we go live as well. And join our broadcast channel on Insta. We're not going to spam you with stuff. We're just going to tell you when we go live. We send you a message so you know when we go live. But thanks for listening. And any creators who want to collaborate locally, reach out. But see you next week.